Hello, today I am taking a deep dive into SBR Bond. What is it? What's it used for? When should you use it? When shouldn't you use it? How do you mix it? Everything you need to know about SBR Bond in one video, so stay tuned. If you work with renders, concretes and that type of wet mixers, it's very likely that you've heard of SBR Bond or even used it in the past yourself. But what is it? What's it for? What does it do? What are the pros? What are the cons? How do you use it? Today I am looking into that. I use SBR Bond a hell of a lot, and I thought it was about time, instead of just slopping it willy-nilly into my mixers and slapping it on top of chimneys to seal the surfaces, I thought I would take a deep dive into SBR Bond, find out exactly what it is, find out exactly how to use it properly, so going forward we can all improve and make better mixers. So what is SBR Bond? SBR stands for Styrene-Butadiene Rubber. It probably doesn't. I've probably said that completely wrong, but you know, I'm reading it from Google and I can't read for toffee. But ultimately it is a latex polymer that comes in liquid form. Of course it is. To be honest, do we really need to know that? No. But what we do need to know is that when you add it to cement, it's like a magical formula that massively improves the mortar or concrete's flexibility, adhesion, water resistance and durability. It kind of acts like a glue that strengthens your mix, but it's not a glue. So what is SBR Bond used for? SBR Bond is used in loads of applications, including bonding concrete layers together, screeding over existing slabs, rendering in damp conditions and tanking old basements. And my favourite, sealing the tops of chimneys before applying a new flange. So sealing porous surfaces for adhesion, just to name but a few. It's also quite common to use SBR Bond in mixers to help them become more water resistant. So when should you use SBR Bond? You can use SBR Bond when you're working in damp conditions, when you need to bond onto an old or smooth concrete surface, or when the surface that you're trying to bond onto is exposed to a lot of moisture or potentially movement. So this makes it really good when you want your mixers to be more flexible and crack resistant. When shouldn't you use SBR Bond? That's a good question. Don't use SBR Bond on greasy, oily or previously sealed surfaces. And the reason for this is because you want your SBR Bond to soak into the surface that you're putting it onto. When it soaks in, it can grab the surface that it's soaking into, and this helps form better adhesion between the surface it's going on and the surface you're placing over the top. So what are the consequences if you do put it on top of greasy, oily or previously sealed surfaces? Well, it simply won't take. And what you might find is the materials you place on top of the SBR that hasn't been applied properly can delaminate, flake off, crack and just ultimately go tits up. Also, you want to avoid using SBR Bond in mixes that already contain certain polymers. The reason for this is you might make the mix overly flexible, too rubbery, it might not set properly, or the mix itself might feel spongy. But you can check the label of whatever it is that you're mixing to see if it already contains polymers. Generally, it will say on the bag, and avoid using SBR in those circumstances unless instructed otherwise by the manufacturer. Also, is it possible to add too much SBR Bond into your mix? Yes, it is. The sweet spot for SBR is 10% of the weight of the cement. What does that mean? Okay, so SBR Bond weighs roughly the same as water, which is roughly 1 litre will weigh 1 kilogram. Therefore, if you have a 25 kilogram bag of cement, 2.5 litres of SBR is probably the sweet spot for that amount of cement. So don't overmix. What are the consequences of overmixing? You might make your mix too sticky, too soft, or too difficult to work with. It also weakens the mix if you've got too much SBR in there as well. So definitely something to avoid. Don't just go splashing it about willy-nilly. I have been guilty of that myself in the past, but we are all learning, aren't we? That's why we're here. That's why it's so marvelous to produce this type of video, because we get to learn something new. Happy days. So how do you mix SBR into the mix? You don't put it straight onto the cement or into the mix dry. Start by mixing it into your water. And always remember that you're adding extra liquid into the mix. So reduce the amount of water you are putting in by the amount of SBR you are putting in. Like I said previously, SBR Bond is roughly the same viscosity as water. So whatever SBR you add, remove the same amount of water. Have you ever heard of a slurry mix? Let's talk about slurry mixes. So a slurry mix is 1 part SBR to 1 part water, and you add cement into the mix and give it a good stir until you get a nice consistency that's a bit like a nice thick paint. A slurry mix is fantastic at sealing surfaces. The idea is you damp down the surface that you want to get really good adhesion to. Damp it down, don't soak it, then paint on your slurry mix with a brush or a roller, however you choose to do it. Wait for the slurry mix to go tacky. You don't want to be going on top of a wet mix. Likewise, you don't want it to go dry. And then add on top the material you want really good adhesion for. So why would you use a slurry mix? Because they're really good when you're working in an area with super low absorption and you want to get a really good bond between the two surfaces. So absolutely perfect for a render on a chimney, for instance, and you don't want to have to go back up there in 6 months' time because your render's falling off. Put it on top of a slurry mix. It will stick like shit. It's also really good when working in damp and cold conditions, particularly where the adhesion could be poor, and very useful in when working in areas that are going to receive high traffic or wet conditions. Ultimately, a slurry mix will supercharge any type of adhesion property. It's just like giving it superpowers. You could also add your slurry mix into your concrete or render mix if you really want to make it super powerful. So remember to wait for your slurry to get slightly tacky before going on top of it. If you are a bit slow and the slurry dries out, all is not lost. Just add some more slurry on top and go again. Do not add your material onto a dry slurry, because what that might do is form like a skin on top of the existing surface, and again you might find that whatever you put on top will delaminate or crack or just fall off. So you want a nice tacky slurry surface if that's the way you're going. If you are using SBR as a sealant for a surface, always make sure that the surface is clean and dust free. We've already spoken about oils and grease, but if you have got a brush or, like what I always carry, a handy blower, make sure you get all the dust off, because like everything, you're only as good as the surface you're going onto, and if it's dusty and horrible, you're going to get poor adhesion. So make sure you clean everything down thoroughly before trying to seal it with SBR Bond. It's magical stuff, but it's not that magical. So that's it. To my knowledge, that is a full rundown of when to, when not to, how to, all the uses of SBR Bond. I think I've covered it all. If I haven't covered it all, please let me know in the comments. That's what the comment section's for. If there's something you want to add, if you want to share your experiences, or just tell me how wonderful SBR Bond is. I love your comments and I read and try and respond to them all. So please comment, like and subscribe to the channel. If you've got this far, thanks for watching. You must really be interested in SBR Bond. It is a fascinating subject. And if you haven't made it this far in the video, why not? You don't know what you're missing. Thanks for watching. Have a great day, and I will see you on the next job.